Welcome to an episode of SGTV. I'm joined today by Derek Waters from Leicester College and our own Spartacus, aka Marcus Barrett. Thanks for joining us today, and today we're going to discuss the AM2 and are you ready for the AM2? We're going to break down each sections, and don't forget, if you're still unsure after this, please contact us. We're here to help and advise in any way we can to support you. So thank you guys for coming today.
That's all right.
Thanks for having me.
First thing then I'd advise you all to do is to download this document off the NET website. NET are the organisation that run and operate the AM2. You guys need to look at this document, and it's a document that needs signing by yourselves, your employer and your training provider. Guys, what's the first thing then? A1, Derek, the first section within this document that we have to do.
Yeah, just, well, for me, I did my AM2 just a few weeks ago. So after many years in the electrical trade, I've got to the point and I've had the results. So I've got my AM2E now, so I did it as an experienced worker. I think you're dead right, Neil. That document is everything. And actually the NET website is full of information about the AM2, AM2S, AM2E, all the different versions of it. The first section is to do with basically safe working practice. Okay, and the first thing we have is a risk assessment.
So how did you go about a risk assessment? Because it's no good filling this document and it says limited, adequate, extensive, unsure. This is a time for every candidate to be honest. And I remember we had this discussion, and it was that, when was the last time you actually filled in a risk assessment? You should have all filled one in for your MVQ and done it 3 times, but that could have been 12 months ago. So yeah, how did you approach it?
I mean, for me, I'm working at Leicester College. I'm teaching. I'm coming across risk assessments on a fairly regular basis, and I'm trying to emphasise that to our learners, that how important it is. The risk assessment that they're talking about here is for the work that you're about to carry out. So the 8.5 hours if you're on the AM2, the 10-hour assessment if you're on the AM2S or the AM2E. But it's about the work you're going to carry out. So again, it's important to have generic ideas about working tidy and making sure you've not got anything you're going to trip over.
So that brings us on to working at heights.
Absolutely. There's overhead install,
Electricity.
Absolutely. So safe isolation is going to feature really prominently in all of this.
Fire.
Fire, absolutely. Okay, we're in a building, an environment where potentially a fire could break out. There were fire extinguishers in the room.
Slips, trips and falls.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So again, just work tidy, making sure I'm not leaving tools and kit all over the place.
Are we allowed to use power tools in the AM2?
No power tools for the AM2. Again, you're just given some hand tools that are made available to you on the sidewalk.
But hand tools still need a risk assessment.
Yeah, of course they do.
Or upper body, manual handling, lifting and using the correct tools.
Yeah.
So if that's on the risk assessment and someone practices that a couple of times before, it should be clear. Section 2, over to the expert, safe isolation markers.
Yeah, so, and again, it's one of them things, isn't it? This is an important part of it, because this isn't just in this document once, is it, Neil?
No,
it's actually in there twice. And it's just important that you're carrying out safe isolation for starters at work. Not nothing to do with the AM2, we're trying to work safely as best as we can, isn't it? But it's about understanding that process, but not just understanding it. Can you implement it? Can you think about things like single phase, 3-phase? Can you remember the steps? Is there any alternative energy? So other sources of supply, there might be PV or battery systems where you have to take extra precautions. And it's one of the things where you have to be honest with yourself. You might say, oh, we don't lock off enough at work, or we don't carry out the procedure enough. This is the chance to be honest and say, well, I can go do my research, I can practice, I can go to college and do it. I can say to my boss, look, I really need to get this part down, because ultimately, I think if you look at statistics, one of the biggest fail rates is on safe isolation, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Because things like the key is left on top of the consumer unit or not put back in the pocket.
That's the main one, put the key back in the pocket. And again, for them 2 sections, if you fail, you've got to go back to your employer. You've got to go back on site and say, I failed safe isolation.
Yeah.
I now need another day to go and carry out that assessment. I then need £180
Yeah.
as a resit fee, loss of earnings, and for simple things where show me, you know, what safe isolation could be you showing and demonstrating to your employer, training provider, or you writing the procedure down.
Yeah.
And when you're in the AM2, there's nothing stopping you writing the procedure down before you actually do it and ticking it off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, like you said there, I think it's an important point. You might not be a student watching this, you might be an employer. And, you know, like what Neil said there, you could potentially go through this list with your employee or your apprentice and say, rather than just, can you do that, mate? Oh, yeah, can you do that? Can you do that? Go on then, show me. And actually, because you've spent all of this time and money training this apprentice, you want them to get the best out of this you can, and you don't want them to pay for resits. Or it might be that you offered to pay for a resit and you don't want to do that. So,
and I think one of the main important things here, you've got two tables.
Yeah.
One, knowledge. The knowledge. Show me the knowledge in understanding. That could be writing it down, explaining to me in a discussion. So then I could tick extensive for you, Marcus, and then experience. Have I, as an employer, observed you carrying out safe isolation? As a college tutor, I might not have seen you do it for 2 years because you've been out
health and
of college.
safety unit as well, isn't it? Yeah.
Again, just go in, practice, show,
Yeah.
Or if the boss is seeing you on site, we can put in down extensive. We know you're ready.
Yeah.
What if what sort of approach then would you take? I'm unsure about carrying out safe isolation on a three-phase system. What would your advice be then to a candidate if they've ticked limited knowledge, limited experience? Where would you direct me?
So the first thing I'll do is speak to your training provider and speak to the tutors. And, you know, tutors are there to help you as much as you think they don't like you sometimes. Does it feel like that sometimes, Derek?
Well, sometimes.
Yeah, they're actually there to help you. And I'm sure if you went to your tutor and said, I'm struggling with safe isolation on 3 phases, is there any way at lunchtime or anything? I can almost guarantee that there's not many tutors who would say, I wouldn't help you. So you've got that avenue. You can also go and speak to your employer and say, can you help me with this? You can do lots of research. There's lots of CPDs out there, you know. You have to take ownership of it. Nobody's gonna give it to you, are they? You have to take that ownership and say, right, I'm not sure on that bit. I'm gonna do what I can to make sure that I'm the best at that possible part.
I think just to add to that as well, that goes along with the checklist for the AM2, there's also a preparation pack.
Yeah.
And I found the preparation pack invaluable. It linked really well up with the checklist. It basically gave you a step-by-step process and the sequence in terms of the 3-phase safe isolation procedure. So I think it's back to the age-old story that you have to do a bit of homework, you have to get yourself a bit prepared for it. And for me, it was about confidence. I've done safe isolation multiple times on site. I've taught safe isolation hundreds of times to students. When it came to the AM2 and I was doing the safe isolation, I'm stood there, there's an assessor who's basically got an iPad taking pictures of me, and I'm sitting thinking, oh my God, am I doing this right? At one point during safe isolation, I lost the thread in terms of the sequence, and what I had to do was literally just say, okay, I've lost track of where I am, and the assessor just said to me, well, you're not completed until you tell me you're finished. So I started again. And that just helped me just breathe.
Calm down a bit.
Absolutely.
But again, your experience helps get you through that because you've prepped for it, you've practiced lots of times, that when you get into that situation and you do just take a breath, you can call it from somewhere, can't you?
Yeah, I think one of the big things Derek's mentioned there is talk to the assessor. No, he's not going to be like a college lecturer, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. You might do that wrong. He's got strict guidelines to follow, but it doesn't mean he's not approachable. If you feel unsure, like Derek's just said, can I just stop a minute? Take a deep breath. Relax. And again, it's not just this checklist. We can do a session on prep skills before you go. How many weeks before are you prepping for your AM2?
Well, it was a bit like back to school for me. I'm in a college, I do some practical in the workshop, but I'm more doing kind of demonstration and instruction. But it was literally back to kind of hand tools. The same with safe isolation. I got one of my colleagues to come up in the workshop and more or less asked him to be my assessor. So we just practiced it, and it was all them bits and the time that it was put in that literally just gave me the bit of confidence. Still scary on the day.
45 minutes to do both. So if you can walk into that room, know how to carry out a risk assessment, filter it in before you go, know your safe isolation, that you can just write it down, then 45 minutes, you don't need 45 minutes.
No.
But that's it. No, you don't carry any extra minutes over.
Yeah.
It's 45 minutes. Section A1 ticked. Yeah?
Absolutely.
100%. What about the 10-hour composite then? The A2 to the A6. What's advice for these apprentices out there ready to undertake this?
Again, it's going to be similar advice sort of going through these sections, because it's just about being honest with yourself. You know, don't look at something and think, oh, yeah, my boss has shown me that a few times, I'm not really sure, but for this sake, I'm not going to tell him I don't know. This is where you have to be very honest and say, well, I've never actually made off an SY gland. You know, I've done a professional discussion about it within my portfolio.
Yeah.
So can I go to my employer and say, oh, have you got any glands on the van and a bit of SY so I can practice? Or go to the college, oh, can I nick a gland, or can I come in at lunchtime one day, or if I finish work early? But you have to have that drive to be able to get there. Don't just tick it, oh, I'm extensive, yeah, I'm the best at everything, you know, I'm a Sparky. When actually that might be something that might be your downfall. And if you notice that is an area you're not strong in now, this is the best time to sort of say, because it gives you that time. When you're doing it in your AM2, you don't have that time now. You can't think, oh, I need to ring my boss and ask him how to do a gland. So
yeah, because we don't want to fail this section, because this is the big
boy.
Know, and £430 resit fees.
Yeah.
That's, you know, could be better spent.
It could be.
Could be a pay rise for someone achieving it.
Yeah.
Derek, within this, there's a section on interpretation of specifications. So I remember doing this a long time ago. When you get your AM2, everything has a specification sheet.
Absolutely.
Every bit of cable.
Yeah,
So-
absolutely. There's a candidate book. So again, obviously we have preparation materials, but on the day there's going to be a candidate book, and it's so much about following the specification. It's very clear. Again, the nerves kick in because you kind of don't read it right, or you feel under a bit of pressure. But you just, again, slow it down. Just think in terms of it. Put into practice the experience and the training that you've had. But don't take anything for granted. Okay, there's a lot of detail in there. It might not always be the way we think it should be.
Yeah.
But again, it's just following the instructions. And again, as a tutor, that was difficult for me, because I have these lots of preconceived ideas and I'm thinking, so I had to slow myself down, put myself in the mindset that I'm not teaching anything here. Yeah. I'm here to learn. I'm here to have my skills and my knowledge checked. And again, it was just a case of, like you said earlier, just breathe, slow it down.
That's like when we were trying to put this table together, Marcus.
Yeah.
And we didn't bother reading the instructions, so we had to get Bethany over to help us. Hey, someone to read for us. What about also when we talk about, because I hear quite a lot of students mention, you know, an heating system in the solar system type of thing. But that, for me, there's a specification, there's a technical data sheet, a wiring diagram. What's that bit about?
To be fair, for me, because I'd not done anything on central heating systems before, so I'd come across it, I'd dabbled with my own at home to try and make it work from time to time. But in terms of the AM2, there are set wiring diagrams, there are set instructions in terms of the programmer. It's just really clear. So there is some fixed wiring that needs to be installed up to a switch fuse spur. Then there's just loads of wiring through the central heating wiring hub. And again, it's just a wiring diagram. I'm not going to say it's wired by colours or wired by numbers. You had to be tuned in to know, am I coming from the programmer? Am I coming from the thermostat? Where's that going to? Is it from the switch fuse spur?
Easy enough to follow, like with my finger now, where I can go, the on in the clock goes to number 4 in the wiring terminal.
I mean, the diagram was really, really clear. And again, given that there might be 150 different connections on there in all, it is really clear, but you have to be methodical. Again, I would have liked to be able to tick off each one of the wires as I'd made the connections and stuff, but it's all laminated and given an instruction not to put any marks on it. So I just went clockwise. I started at 12 o'clock. I started working my way around. The hub is in the centre. All the kind of accessory boxes and programmers and stuff were around the outside.
So nothing. We're not asking you to be an heating engineer.
No.
This is the bit about following a specification of wiring diagram and how to interpret it. That'll be great.
Again, it's one of them things, isn't it? If you're not familiar with working from a spec, because you might work for a one-man band and not often have a spec to work from or technical data, you know, this way you speak to people, college and stuff like that, and say, can I see an example of a specification so I know it's not the first time I'm seeing one?
Yeah.
And that's the important thing about this checklist, isn't it? It's making sure you're ready within yourself.
Yeah.
So sometimes then, when I'm choosing protective devices, it's not always clear.
No.
You know, what to use, what protective, should it be a 32, is it a 25, is it 16, is it a 20? How do I decide that then?
Yeah, again,
where does that information come from?
Again, you will have things in the specification, won't you?
Specification, and there's a wiring diagram for each of the individual circuits that you're going to complete. And it's just a case of, you know, follow manufacturer's instructions to understand how equipment you're not familiar with works.
Yeah.
In this case, follow the specification, because that's what you've been given.
My advice would be, you may have worked on similar installs, you know, in your apprenticeship. However, just because you're used to, let's say, feeding a lighting circuit with a B6 or etc., you can't just assume, oh yes, a lighting circuit, I'll throw on a B6, it's going to be fine, because even though that may be fine, that's not what the specification will be telling you. So for me, try not to get too comfortable with what you do in your everyday life. You might be an amazing Sparky, but them assumptions can actually cause you problems.
Absolutely.
So again, the specification is not going to tell you any lies. You wire per the specification.
Yeah.
When it comes then to looking at me steel wide arm and my SWA cable between 2 points and clipping it, obviously when I'm terminating, do I have to do it, because it's a short run, do I have to install one end, or can I terminate both ends off the job? Could I terminate, you know, both ends on a bench and not risk anything? And what would I be looking for when I'm doing my steel wide armoured gland?
So when you're obviously naturally glanding off, you want to make sure your gland's tight. You want to make sure that all your strands are even. They haven't got any crossovers. They haven't missed the gland as well. So you want to make sure you've got a good strong gland. And like Neil said, you don't actually have to, and again, people have different ways, don't they? So Neil, again, clearly there, Neil likes the bench method. For me, what I would say is, and what I'd say to my students is, make the first one on the bench, get that in, and then we can install the second one, because then we can clearly get our measurement and it's there. We can't really go too wrong. And it doesn't mean you can't put the first one in where it's going. Slightly tighten it, but not over tighten it. Measure up, take it off, take it back to the bench, gland off, and then in we go.
When I'm doing this install, we're advised, I think you can take your own side cutters, but everything else is provided. So, are the grips there, are the spanners there? Because I like spanners when I'm doing my SWA. So, just for certain sizes.
You're old school.
And I get a tight.
Yeah, there was a tool kit. So again, you had the hand tools that were just mounted on the wall, and I'm sure different centres are slightly different and stuff. But then there was a tool kit with pipe grips and stuff in there. So there was everything that you needed. Just back to the spec, it says you can bring your own side cutters, you can bring your own pair of pliers, and you can also bring your own stripping tool.
Right.
Again, you know, you've got to talk to the assessor and do it. If you're going to use your own equipment, it needs to be checked to make sure that it's safe, so there's no signs of damage or wear or potential injury.
The SWA then, quite often, I know when we've been doing demos in the college, all of us, and you know, we've made a few little mistakes while you're talking and doing things. What if I do make a mistake? You know, but it's there, I've kind of like not gone through the armoured enough, and I'm bending it back, it won't come off. Is there any like tips you'd advise me to do? Because I don't really want a new piece.
Well, I'll jump in there. I mean, again, steel wire armoured, I'd done it years ago. And again, I'd given a few demos in the college, but I'm mostly in the class now. I brought home 2 gland kits. I brought home a length of steel wire armour, and I just had 1 hour a day where I was doing terminations and I was making off glands, and it was just to get muscle memory back into my hands. And again, I'd say that I just had a caddy. I'd roll it out, the weather was good, I'd sit in the garden and I'd literally just do it. What I was finding as I was doing it was I was making bits of mistakes, so I started just keeping a note on what was going wrong and what wasn't working for me. So I was actually kind of training myself to just make sure that when it came to the day.
But again, part of your apprenticeship is training yourself as well.
Absolutely.
People think, nah, it's the college's problem. And the employers say it's the college's, and the college say, no, the employers. But your education is your own responsibility. You have to keep everyone in line. If the college isn't doing enough for you, you have to tell them you're not doing enough. If your employer hasn't, it's a very hard conversation because you want to try and keep your neck in. You don't want to thingy. But there's other ways you can say, you know, can you show me this? You know, just keep pushing.
And that practicing, you're making mistakes, you teach yourself how to come to it. So when you come to do it in the exam, you've not got any worries. They've gone because you've practiced.
Still worry. We're all human.
Honestly, I remember doing the steel-wired armour and I got to a point where I had a couple of strands and I tried to do it all the way forward and back and stuff, and there were still a couple of strands, and I just thought, right, I'm not going to flap it, I'm going to hold it there, I'm going to put another couple onto it with the junior, and I just did a bit more and they came away.
I used to teach people the electric tape round you know,
so
12 feet. But there's a thing that some... Go on.
Sorry, just quickly on that one. So again, just from a valid point, you've heard you can take certain tools in, that being pliers, side cutters, stripping tool. Now, it might be that when you're working on site with your employer, you're using an SWA stripping tool. And actually, if you've never used a junior hacksaw to terminate an SWA gland, then it's things like that to think about, isn't it? Where actually, am I going to be allowed to take that stripping tool in? Probably not.
No.
Therefore, I need to be able to know how to do it, and I need to get that feel of that junior hacksaw and when it's actually cut enough, not just...
And you know, even that with me, I was practicing with my own tools at home. And again, the feel in my hand was different because obviously I just chose to use the Centre's tools. And again, it was just easier. But like you're dead right. My junior hacksaw's home, I was putting a new blade on it whenever I needed one. The one in the Centre was absolutely fine, but it still just didn't have the same feel. So it's just what you get used to.
I remember a student coming to me and saying a piranha nut.
Piranha nut,
I thought they were fish that ate us all then was swimming in dodgy lakes. No, what's that all about then? So what's the piranha nut?
One end of the steel-wired armour is connected into the three-phase consumer unit or three-phase board. The other end is going into a plastic box, which is an isolator. So there's nowhere to make that earth connection. So the piranha nut, or referred to as the earthing nut, is effectively a lock nut for the armoured gland. Okay, and again, lock the gland in place with the armoured nut, make the connection and have an earth on it. And that feeds your kind of earth through the circuit.
So we kind of like need to take out the middle of the isolator to get room to work on it, and then the piranha nut, the earth nut, on with the gland body tightened up, because if I'm tightening the SWA gland up, then the piranha nut could spin round the back and I've not got access for me flying lead. So put that on, and so that's another skill I've got to learn, is terminating, back to how you do it on site, Marcus, terminating the cable into the gland body.
Yeah, that's sort of how I do it. And with the piranha nuts...
in shrouds.
With the piranha nuts, again, I don't know which ones they use, etc. now, but little tips like take the screw that you're going to crimp onto for your fly lead, take that out first, because there's multiple points on the piranha nuts.
That's right.
And then actually, no matter which way it spins, there's nothing worse than doing it up tight and then realising the screw's at the back and you're like, I've got to undo it. So just whip that screw out, don't lose it. Tighten it up, then make your fly lead off, then you can concentrate on the other end. So,
And that's what I found myself doing in prep, was just getting the sequence right. And I think that's what you put across really well there. But it's if you're not doing it on a daily basis, you just make the time. You get an isolator box. You get yourself a gland, you make it off, and you just practice. I mean, that for me, it was just about all the practice paid off. And I know for the average electrician, that's always going to be about apprenticeship and gaining the experience. But there's no time when you have to start this. This is not a case of, okay, I've got my MVQ completed and now I need to prep up for AM2. For practicing electricians and apprentice electricians and stuff, start now.
Yeah.
So whether you're year 1, year 2, year 3, just get stuck in.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, in your first year, you know, maybe colleges could encourage apprentices in their first year when they're starting, right, download this, I want you to go through this and honestly answer this now. And generally you would think, unless it's an experienced worker or anything like that, that their knowledge is going to be limited. Yeah. And then from a college's point of view, an assessor's point of view, you could then say, right, year 2, now I want you to answer, see if it changes.
Yeah.
And this is you know what I think colleges could do more of. You do that every year of apprentices, and then the tutors can actually, and the assessors can identify weaknesses as they're coming up towards the end of their apprenticeship. So it might be they've gone through the 3 years and they're now extensive on most things, but they're still adequate or limited on a couple of things. Now these are our points to focus on as a college to help you better. And I think that's something colleges could do, you know, in regards to their learners.
Because it may be like you say, Marcus, it might be year 1, year 2, year 3. I never do data at college. When was the last time you did a bit of Cat 5?
Absolutely, yeah.
And now it's in here, and there's a bit of thing called a bridge for the Cat 5. You've got to go bridge over voltage, 230 volt cable in, you know, but if you've never seen the bridge, what's that all about?
Yeah, well, that was to do with the compartmentalised trunking. So, so if one of your data points is above the compartmentalised trunking and one is below, you're going to have to bridge across the low voltage section.
Yeah.
Which again, the specification will tell you exactly which sections to use for which runs of cable.
Yeah.
But the bridge is nothing more than a little piece of plastic. It's a channel. It effectively allows you to run your.
But if I'd have left that out, I'm against the regulations. So therefore, I would have failed that section. Like I said, £480 to go and do. Wow.
Yeah. Money in it.
So practice, training, massive part up front.
Yeah.
I've got a question, Marcus, then. Ask the expert. It's, what about bonding? Can I do bonding to my gas and water pipe if they're next to each other with just one 10 mil? Or do I have to do them separately?
So as far as I'm aware, and Derek might, you know, he's not long done his AM2, if they're next to each other, as far as I know, you can loop across from 1 to 1. Doesn't mean you have to, does it? Or no. I don't think it would necessarily specify, because there's multiple ways to do that. But as far as I'm aware, you can loop from one to the other. The important thing is we don't break that conductor.
Absolutely.
So if we're going from water to gas, we don't cut it off, terminate the water, and then run another one from there, because we don't have a continuous run there. So if you are going to do that process, it's very important for me anyway. And again, this stems past AM2, because this is building you up to be the best electrician you can be. You don't break that conductor. You keep it a solid run throughout.
We don't split the strands when they go into the earth connection.
No.
Either side.
No.
We crimp it.
Yeah, we put a lug on there.
How did you do yours?
I did them as 2 separate runs. So there was water pipe, gas pipe. And again, it was just the day that was in it. I was thinking in terms of if I had my ergo strip tool, I would have stripped it nicely and taken that little section off. Didn't have that available to me, so I just decided I'm just going to strip each end.
But again as well, this is where the pre-assessment day I think is massively important, because it's questions like this you can ask, and you can say on the pre-assessment day, are we allowed to run one, let's say, bonding conductor to our gas and water and go from one to the other without breaking the conductor, or do we have to run separate ones? Because it might be you're not allowed to do that, but if you do that and you don't know, so use the pre-assessment day to ask and when I had students, I used to say, ask it at the pre-assessment day. That's what the pre-assessment day is for. You try and get as much information as you can.
Take that document with you and ask at the pre-assessment day.
Say, Neil told me.
And again, why are you ticking something to say, I've got extensive knowledge, I've got experience, extensive experience, or adequate experience, if I've only done it once in the last year? You know, wait till you've done it a few times. Don't rush this, because you want to pass first time. You want to save a day's work. You want to look good in the employer's eyes that, I smashed it first time. Did you, Gaffer? Because I've put the work in.
I think another important point there is as well that you'll have strengths. You might be doing a certain type of wiring system on a regular basis, but don't overlook that either. You still need to practice, because you know, on the day you might be absolutely up to speed with some of the SY or some of the steel wired armoured cable, but then your twin and earth lets you down. And that's the thing, is just about, you know, a good sports person, they know where their strengths are, that's great, but know your weaknesses, practice that. And it's the same trick as an electrician.
Yeah, 100%. And again, you're going to get, like you said there, pointed on quickly, you're going to get people from different parts of the industry. You will get, people who are involved more in industrial, people who are more involved in domestic. As an industrial electrician, you might be absolutely fine with the motor circuit and the direct online starter, where a domestic installation electrician might struggle with that one.
Yeah.
But then, like you said, on the flip side, something that, so like you said, don't think about it. And again, from a sort of mental health point of view, don't think about, he's going to be fine because he does industrial, so he can do everything. Well, it doesn't work that way. Like you said, everyone, even us, we all have our strengths and weaknesses. It's about learning to identify where your weakness is. And not just from an AM2 point of view, from somebody who's come off the tools like 7-8 weeks ago, run a business as a business owner, and eventually that's the aspiration of everyone who wants to be an electrician. I'm going to work for myself, earn loads of dough. You need to learn what your weaknesses are. So when you go into business, you don't try and push them weaknesses too much because you want to play on your strengths. Yeah. But also, you have to work on them weaknesses in the background to bring them up level slowly. No one's saying you have to do it overnight, but like you said, prepping on the
But you've got to
weaknesses.
tackle it head on. Because I think there's, we focus on our strengths and that's great. Okay, but we start tackling and head on our weaknesses. Well, that makes you an all-rounder, and then you're
Well, one of the things we see, Scolmore Group are proud partners with NET at the UK Skill Electric competition. And one of the things we see there on a regular basis is we have a conduit bubble set or a bridge set. And the amount of students that obviously don't practice it, we give it to them beforehand, but are they practicing? Because on the day, nerves, same sort of thing, the pressure. And again, you've got to do a 90 degrees, you've got to do a bubble set in the AM2. When was the last time you done conduit? Take some own practice. Practice makes perfect on it. And the same with your steel conduit. Yeah. And there's an awful lot don't do steel. It's time to go back to the training provider.
Yeah, 100%. And say, can I do some extra sessions on steel? But also, it might be, and a lot of apprentices, they might be comfortable with a lot of this stuff. But again, you've said it there, when you're in an assessment, you're even leading up to the assessment, I know what I'm like. 3 or 4 days before doing an assessment, it's just on my mind and I can't think of anything else. So it might be you're comfortable with doing these things. There's lots of help out there in terms of educational YouTube channels and stuff that can just help ease your mind. Just watch it and then it gives you that, well, I knew that, yeah, I can do that. It gives you that bit of confidence. That's what I would say, where actually, because again, it's about confidence. It's not being about cocky or overconfident. No. It's just that level of, I'm fine with that. I know that. And it's just, giving you that extra level of...
every day we're asking each other questions, we're running things by, just checking our reassurance.
I ask you if you want a cup of tea, you ask me about bi-directional RCBOs,
Yeah, and then I ask you, would you like some jammy Dodgers? That's it, we've got it all. Bev, where's the pizza?
Just on that one, Neil, I set up a bit of base camp at home because I'm not a practicing electrician. I don't have tools and stuff in the shed, but I dedicated one room in the house to bringing home a conduit bender. My wife wasn't too chuffed with that, but it was to just do some practice the weekend before. I'd obviously done it in the college. I could make use of all the resources in there and stuff. But the same thing happened the first day of install. The night I came home, I now was trying to focus on, right, what have I got to get done for tomorrow? And I did some last minute practice. Okay, and again, for someone who's working on steel conduit day in, day out, that won't be necessary. But for me, I might do that once or twice a year.
You may do a 90 degree bend too more. What do I do? I can't have another piece of conduit, so how can I pull that bend out? How can I correct it?
Yeah, and again, go to the pre-assessment day, and this is all part of the same story, isn't it? I know we're sort of chopping from assessment day and colleges, etc., and this list. You can ask these questions about steel conduit. Am I allowed another piece if I mess up? Am I allowed to cut it into 2 pieces and do it as separate? These are the sort of things you need to ask them to get clarification, so you can go in there with a sort of plan.
Yes.
Yeah. You have to be open to compromise and hopefully your career training to be an electrician has taught you that things don't often go the way we want them to.
No.
However, having a plan in the first place gives you that time, okay, this plan, and you can either follow that plan or then slightly defer from it, but that plan will always be the fundamental. So that's what I think asking the questions is just the biggest thing, really.
I totally agree with that. You know, have a battle plan.
Yeah,
you're going to do it over 2.5 days.
Yeah.
So on the first day, you might do the safe working practices, takes up about an hour, 45 minutes, as you said. But then you're only going to get about 6 hours of install.
Yeah.
So if you're on an AM2S or an AM2E, you've got 10 hours.
Yeah.
So you're in the middle of an install. You get to go home or go back to your digs or wherever you're staying to do your assessment. But you sit down and you just start visualising it and thinking through and making a bit of a plan and stuff. And that worked for me.
Just something you mentioned there that we could have discussed earlier was that. Where are you staying? How are you getting to the AM2?
Yeah.
You know, what time of day am I going there? If I'm going like Birmingham or somewhere, is the M6 going to be blocked? Yeah. So I need to allow myself. But when I get to the centre, you can have a cup of tea.
Absolutely, yeah.
You could take a drink with you. You can take notes with you, keep them in your car, you know. Do some revision in your car, but get there prepared.
Yes.
It's no good being in a panic. Oh, I'm late, I'm stuck in a traffic jam, I've lost 3 hours, what do I do? Make sure you got the centre's number so you can talk to them as well. Yeah. Guys, section B, this is shocking for me because I quite often see loads and loads of questions on YouTube, you know, on media channels in that, asking about inspection and testing. And I know from experience, I'm sure Derek and you both know, when we've got apprentices, level 3 apprentices at school, year 3 apprentices should I say, they're in the college, they've left, and they don't never do any inspection and testing on site. You know, some companies don't put in that training in that, and they think, well, actually, I've done it at college, I've passed it all, I've just done me, you know, year 3 in it, the 2 to nudge, wink, wink. On the day, you've got to prove competent. You've got to show you fully understand that. Now, there's 2 inspection and testing. First of all, NET have got 2 apps out. One's called Amped Up for safe isolation. Preparation, it's quite fun, it's quite a game, I quite enjoy it myself. And the second one is they've got an inspection and testing where you've got a virtual mega multimeter to use, and that's great. Check me understanding, my knowledge. At home, should have an on-site guide. It's all in there to follow, and the on-site guides and guidance note 3 are there available for you at the AM2.
Yeah.
So it comes down now. When was the last time I looked at guidance note 3? When was the last time I opened the on-site guide? But more important, actually, how do I test the 3-phase board? How do I test the single-phase board? How do I test them devices that are in them if I've not done it on site?
Yeah, so for me, when we used to do sort of as part of the apprenticeship, you have a testing unit, didn't you?
Yes.
And I used to get the learners to write their own detailed guide on how they test the circuit. So that it's in their words. I let them use the on-site guide for references. They weren't allowed to copy. It was in their words and their way of doing it. As long as it was still correct, I was fine with it. And I just got them to have that just because it sort of helps with their own confidence. They go into it, I know how to do this. I've written out, effectively, I've written a step-by-step guide on how to do this. And it just helps build their confidence, because testing, again, like you said, it's not something everyone can do. I wouldn't say competently, that's the wrong word, but some people love testing, some people hate testing. It's as simple as that. If your employer doesn't like doing lots of testing jobs, you might be doing lots of minor works and stuff, but you might be missing out on other key tests that you might not include in a minor work. So
section B then comes back to your favourite markers. Well, it should be all our favourites really, and more important, safe isolation again. Now we've isolated a 3-phase board once. We have to do the same one again, but now it's asking me to isolate a lighting circuit. Maybe it could be a lighting circuit that's an intermediate lighting circuit, where instead of taking me neutral to me light, I might have brought it in conduit trunk down to my actual switch and took me neutral through. So if I've got an intermediate lighting circuit and I'm doing safe isolation, where do I safely isolate? At the fuse, the protective device?
No, I wouldn't say at the protective device.
I wouldn't test at the protective. I'd lock it off there.
I would lock it off there,
identify the circuit. Ask, well, before I do that, what's the first thing I need to do?
Seek permission.
Seek permission.
Safe Scolmore.
So I seek permission. I've locked off, put me, and then where am I going to test?
Then you're going to test at the point of the circuit you're going to be working on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what? So because it's single phase, just safety first on the earth to the live on the earth
line
to the neutral, and then do me neutral to me line. Suitable for the intermediate circuit?
Yeah, but you've also got to think about each side of the switch. You don't necessarily know where that permanent feed is coming in. So you need to maybe be testing on different sides of the switches. But again, with safe isolation, it's just important that you test all of the relevant conductors.
So if I'm holding the thing, how do I switch all the switches? Can I ask anyone to come and switch the switch for me?
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I was doing that and going through the sequence and stuff, it was literally a set of steps. I was working on a fitting up a bulb, and I was getting down, flicking the switch, going back up and checking it, getting back down, checking all three combinations, flick the next switch, all three combinations, flick the last switch, all three combinations.
But you could ask
I could,
if you wanted.
I think for me, the assessor was stood back observing, had an iPad, and to be fair, was giving me the space to do what I should be able to do.
And so just on that point quickly, it's important when you're doing it, if you do have a strength, let's say like you said there, where you can ask the assessor, is it not a good opportunity to show him you don't really need to, you don't need to be helping me. There's that element of confidence as an assessor. You know what it's like if you've got somebody who's struggling massively and you can see that, and somebody who's clearly confident, you are going to be swaying more to... I'm not saying that's how it is, because each person gets their assessor, but what I mean is, it's no different when you're doing your driving test. If you show that you're confident on the road, if you're nervous and you're like this and you're shaking everywhere, they're going to pick that up and say, is he ready? Or is she ready?
Very true.
Whereas if you've got that element of confidence, no, I can do this part and I understand the process, there's that, So show them you know.
Show them you know, or just say, I'm switching the switches and I'm operating the switches.
I think that's a good point, because again, I was explaining what I was doing as I was going along, and that comes quite natural because I've been in a classroom for a long time.
And that gives you confidence.
Yeah, but again, just to say it out loud just means, because it does feel like scary. You know what I mean? You're on your own. There's no one you can call. There's no mates or whatever. You've got an assessor, but he's there checking to make sure you know what you're doing. And again, they can't help. I think they could lend a hand to something if you needed it. But ultimately, you're the driver. You're the one calling the shots.
Show that confidence.
And again, so there's lots of different parts of this install we could ask to be carried out safe isolation on. But if you only had done it in college on a consumer unit and never done an intermediate circuit or motor, that type of thing, you need to start thinking, I could be asked to carry out safe isolation on one of these. It goes on within our document, 3.5 hours inspection and testing. It says, working with guidance note 3, carry out the following test. And at the bottom, complete the paperwork. So the paperwork we need to will be in the regulations. It's the one out of BS 7671.
Okay, but I'm going to take you back to the NET website where they actually have a download. So for anyone prepping to do their AM2, you can download the electrical installation certificate. So it'll give you the document that they want you to use. It's going to got the NET logos and stuff.
So do they provide that when you're there, or do you have to bring guidance notes 3? Or
they provide them documents while you're there. But what I'm saying is, there's nothing to stop you downloading the blank copies and doing a practice run and just going through it again like that with your employer, going through it with your training provider. And just being clear. Oh, hang on, but there's example copies in the on-site guide and guide note 3 as well. So there's loads of help and support for that.
A big thing for me there on that point is you might work with an employer, and when I was working on site, everything's technology now.
Yeah.
I didn't do paper-based certificates. How many electricians do you know who actually now do paper-based? It's generally all technology, so on an iPad or a tablet or a phone, or some sort of software. So you might have filled in test certificates for your employer. They might be fine with you filling it in, but you're filling it on an iPad, not a paper-based document that may be set up differently. So again, it's not just assuming, I know how to fill out certificates. You get there, oh, I haven't seen this one since Neil showed me that in my 8th edition course. You know, it's one of them, isn't it?
On-site guide, the Guidance Note 3 have got these certificates
and actually filled out, haven't they?
Absolutely,
Guide, They show you how to fill them out.
So check again, and you've got it while you're filling in, it's next to you if you want to use it. But also, if you think, from this document, it tells me what cables I'm going to be installing, I could actually start preparing beforehand. Is it method B, method C? I can start looking at reference
methods and cable types, etc.
Devices, where do I get the BSEN number from? It's that type of thing. Again, a week before I go, not asking to write everything in one go, break it down into a revision plan. You know, that storyboard, drawing pictures.
And again, that's why I think it's a good idea to have this as almost from a college as a live document, a live tracking document throughout. From the day you start, you do this on your induction, and then you revisit it maybe even twice a year, or as you do something, you write on there the date you've done it or anything like that, and you use it as a live. I think colleges should use this as a live document to help apprentices.
Yeah, I really like that idea, Marcus. I mean, again, and it gives the learner the ownership of it.
Yeah, 100%.
But again, for a young person coming into the electrical sector, they're going to feel like I'm moving forward. So as you said, if it was checked twice a year, I'm 10% of the way there, or I'm 25% of the way there. And that's what we need, because I think you mentioned earlier as well about young people driving it forward and taking a bit of a lead on it.
Taking ownership.
And
your education.
Absolutely. And it's your future and your quals. You walk away with the AM2, you know what I mean? It doesn't belong.
Let's not fall into the trap where we're checking a tick.
No, 100%, But that's why I said a live document.
Show me the knowledge. Show me your understanding. Demonstrate it to me.
But again, if it's a live document and you get, let's say you finish your underpinning knowledge slightly early, and you have a couple of months, because generally sometimes apprentice groups, they finish their underpinning knowledge, they may have a couple of exams to resit and bits like that. But what an opportunity then to sit with them on a one-to-one basis. Say, right, we're going to go through this. I want you in this day, blah, blah, blah. We're going to go through it all. And then you pick stuff out. Almost like when you have your assessment on site with a competent person scheme. You show them a test certificate. They'll look at it and they'll say, right, carry out a ring final circuit test on that circuit for me. And then they're going to check some of the values actually match up to what you've tested. It's a similar thing, isn't it? You random pick through, right, talk to me about what prospective fault current is. You know, and get them to show you that way. And then, oh, wait there, we can see here that you're still limited in these. Right, so what I'm going to do is I want you in every week on your college day. You finished all your underpinning knowledge. So what I want you to do is half a day working on your portfolio to make sure it's finished. And then I want you half a day terminating SWA glands and helping, even using it as a directive of, you know, that, right, there's a level 2 group in there and they're doing SWA. I want you micromanaging for me and helping each of them on how to install it. Like, it's very hard for a teacher because it's so busy anyway. I understand that from doing it, but sometimes this can make it easier in the long run, can it, for teachers?
Yeah, but again, to have a more experienced learner supporting a younger learner is brilliant.
100%.
Because again, it's not just about the tutor all the time. Here's the demonstration and then over to you and you get it done. You're dead right, Marcus. We might have 20 learners in a group, and with the best will in the world, I try and drag them around with me. So if you ask me a question, there's 2 guys behind me who are learning from the bit that you weren't sure on. And again, just all about support.
100%,
There's lots of testers out there.
Absolutely.
You know, like, and if you've only used a TIS, a Fluke, something like that, and the centre's got a mega, that's the brand name.
Depends on the centre.
It depends on the centre, but they could have a mega multifunctional tester, and you're not used to.
So you're not allowed to take your own tester in then?
No. So only hand tools. Depends on the centre you go to, but again, the Net website gives a breakdown as to what's available, what testers they use at that centre. Now, I did because a bit over the top on some of these things, I rang the centre the week before I was going.
To find out what.
Just to check.
Yeah.
The centre were so helpful. They sent me over a kind of user guide. Again, it was a tester that I wasn't familiar with.
Yeah.
And they sent me over the user instructions. And again, the assessor was supportive with that, because I explained to him I don't use this on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And he took, before putting the time on the assessment, he just took the time to talk me through it. It took him 5 minutes. That just helped me a bit.
Yeah.
And again, it's not doing the testing for you. It's,
No.
it's just making sure.
These net assessors are nice guys, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah.
Support it. And again, I just need to know if I'm doing continuity of circuit protective conductor, the R1 and R2, I just need to know I need it set it on low ohms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then
100%. And like you're saying, my advice is, no matter what tester you have, the process is the same.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so make sure you know that process, and as you've just heard, the assessors and the test centre understand that you may not have used that tester ever in your life.
Yeah.
So there is going to be an element there of help to understand the functionalities of that tester. But regardless, you should know the tests and the procedures, because regardless of what brand you're using, the way we test continuity of our circuit protective conductor is the same.
Yeah.
The way we test insulation resistance is the same. The way we undertake a loop test, if we have to do it, is the same.
Yeah.
It does not affect, depending on the tester, the process. So make sure you know that testing process.
know the process. And again, use the net app.
Yeah.
The inspection and testing app. It takes you through these
Yeah,
tests
yeah.
physically.
Yeah.
Just to add to that one as well, Neil, so obviously they've got the good apps,
Yeah.
but they've also got some videos and useful videos on the different components of the AM2. So they're not doing it on a centre rig, they're doing it on another one.
Yeah.
And they were short, they were 3-5 minutes. But I found them really useful. And again, I was hitting the pause button and just checking to see how he was doing stuff and the likes. And for me, again, I teach 2391.
Yeah.
So it was just about confidence, because even after all these years, I'm still checking to see, do I know what I think I know?
So just a quick question for you, Derek, because you've recently been through it. So let's say I've gone through the 10 hours, I've installed the job, okay? Yep, fine, moved on to the next part, which is inspection and testing. Am I testing my own rig?
If you've installed it, and that's a decision made by the assessor, so if you've completed the installation, okay, and the assessor, well, I don't think they fully assess it, but they'll make a call on whether you're doing it on your rig. But there was also another completed rig next to me. Identical. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I imagine they do that because if they know you've made a few mistakes, they don't want you to then find that on your testing and not be able to move on.
But,
So
but even if you've not finished, because maybe I didn't get a chance to do, say, the three-phase steel wire armoured circuit. Well, I can't test it if I ain't done it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So if you test your own rig then, again, we might not know the answer to this. If you was to test your own rig, and let's say you was doing continuity of CPC and you noticed that maybe you'd got the polarity wrong on, let's say, a light fitting.
Yeah.
Is that the end of the AM2 for you?
No, because again, the inspection and test phase, which is 3.5 hours long, as Neil said, is an opportunity to put right.
Yeah.
Just like on site. We do stuff, we might be inspecting and testing our colleagues' work. It's an opportunity to just make them tweaks, put it right. If you've seen something you've done wrong, if you've got exposed copper on some of your terminations, you can literally take that time just to nip it up. And just make it.
Yeah, that's what Derek's talking about, the exposed coppers for them. It's when the cable enters the accessory and it's tightened up at 90 degrees, faceplate at 90 degrees, you don't want to see any exposed copper.
No, that's it.
Yeah. Are they strict on us doubling over single or?
And again, I can only speak from my own experience and stuff. But I was given the instruction that we just needed good terminations and
good strong.
Again, they didn't specify I had to double it over, but they didn't specify I didn't have to double it over. What I would say is that the doubling over for obviously like a ring main if it's into a socket is fairly essential if it's a radial circuit. But for some of the smaller circuits, like lighting circuits and stuff, it's nice to do it, but it might not even fit.
So
again, that's part of forgetting the AM2 and everything. That's part of being an electrician.
Absolutely,
Understanding what connections need to be where, and you making the judgment and that call on the suitability of the connection that you're undertaking. Really, so that is part of life as an electrician. Isn't
Absolutely,
it?
Having worked in colleges, all of us, and visited many colleges,
You didn't do much work in college, did you? Derek said you didn't.
Yeah.
Hey, the Arting soulmate, the Leicester College, Derek is. We went in, you see and observe lots and lots of dead testing, because you seem to do it from day one.
Yeah.
So carrying out a dead test, you know, but again, don't get confident. Go through what's the first test, well, inspection, then what's the first test, but then we come to live testing, and people might miss out the polarity bit on a live testing.
Yeah, so again, it's one of the most common ones to sort of forget, that actually the first live test is checking the supply polarity. Yeah, checking that the incoming tails are actually correct, because if they're not, that's going to cause issues with the rest of or a dangerous situation with the rest of the installation.
And that brings me round to, because we're working live now, you know, we've done safe isolation, we need to get exposure to the main earth.
Yeah.
So the cover's off, the board's still safely isolated, the outgoing circuits, because we're working on the incoming side of things, so it's live, we need to be careful of it.
As well, like
you've got a spec sheet, you've got an on-site guide, you've got a guidance note 3, and in them it tells you the correct procedure to follow.
And again, it's a couple of things just to pull from that. The first one being what we spoke about at the start of when we did section A, risk assessment. Yeah. You're going to have something to do with that in your risk assessment.
Yeah.
Also, for me, again, that pre-assessment day, are we calculating our ZS values? Are we calculating our PFC? Are we measuring it? This is a chance to find out, and then actually, we've been told we have to measure our ZE and our prospective fault current, but we're going to calculate our ZSs. I know now I need to make sure I know how to measure for prospective fault current and not just do a calculation. So for me, it's that pre-assessment day and all the planning going up to it, trying to just find out as much information as you can. So.
And on the spec sheet, because if we look at the guidance note 3 on-site guide, it says PSC, but in this assessment they're only asking for the prospective fault current marker. So what's the difference between PSC and they're asking me to do a PFC?
Basically what they're saying is the prospective fault current is the worst case scenario. So we have our PEFC, so our prospective earth fault current, and we have our prospective short circuit current as well. So whichever reading would be the highest would become your prospective fault current. And again, if we're doing 3-phase, it's very important that we look at doubling that as a rule of thumb. And that is, we don't actually double our prospective earth fault current, we only double our value between line and neutral, and that's in the regulations as well, where it states we only double line and neutral. We don't double the highest, we double the line and neutral.
So we need, again, not only to practice, get exposure to it, not always in a college environment, in a real life situation. Again, we're using different meters. That conversation to say, assessor, I'm doing this today, where do I see this PFC value that I need to double, because I'm not familiar with that. You know, on the Mega we see it all the time, it's clear and easy to see.
Doing that for practice, the tester that they had at the centre that I did it at literally had one test. It was a 3-wire test that picked up on the prospective short circuit current, the prospective earth fault current, but it then told us which was the higher of the two. So again, it just became kind of one test.
I know the tester now. I guess the tester. I think I've worked it out. I have one.
Sorry, I should. There are other testers available on the market.
But again, it's that pre-assessment day. It's working out, you know, and it's being honest with yourself. Do I know what all of them things are, so I can actually make that call? Isn't it? There's no point saying, I know what PFC is. And then they get there and, like you said, I've never heard of PSSC or PSCC.
Did you use the same test instrument for phase rotation, or was it another?
No, there was a separate independent tester. So there was a little phase rotation tester that was made available to me. And that was just because the multifunction tester that I used just didn't have that feature on it. But what I'd say as well in terms of the inspection and test, it's on the spec. The spec tells you step by step what test you're going to do next.
So there's 2 things there. Read the spec, which we always tell every student to do anyway. We just ignore it when we're building tables. And don't be afraid to ring the centre up and say, what test instruments am I going to use on the day? They're
like
there
you said
to help
you did, Derek. They sent you a user guide. So
I mean, they were so helpful because again, they're not giving you any cheats. They're not giving you any advantage over anyone else. You're just asking a simple question in preparation, like if you were going on site. You know, what equipment am I going to be installing? I might need to do a bit of homework to find out from a manufacturer like Scolmore just as to how exactly this is going to work for me.
So RCD, there's an RCBO in these install.
Yes.
Remember.
Again, there's multiple ways we can test. For instance, RCBOs, manufacturers will tell you to test them at the terminals with all loads disconnected. But from a safety point of view, the assessment centre might want you to do it from somewhere else. So it's that pre-assessment day. Am I going to be required to test at the top of the RCBO or test at the RCDs themselves? Or am I going to have to test on the circuit for a safety? For a safety purpose.
Yeah.
And again, it's about using your knowledge to then to ask these questions and actually build that battle plan that you was talking about.
I tested out the socket because again the tester had the plug-in attachment, and again I just said to the assessor, I'm going to check it out the socket because I feel that's going to be the safest place for me to carry out this test. And again, he was perfect.
But knowing the different ways, two different ways. One said to me, it's worth knowing both ways. And the other thing is, you need to read the on-site the regs, the guidance, a minimum guidance that say you should test once at either 0 or 180.
Yeah.
But we always know, being good, experienced electrician, you'll go through the auto.
Yeah, well...
what did you do in the test?
Because again, I teach inspection and test, and I know what the wiring regs are telling us to do now, okay, and that's the requirement. But again, for me, I still check at half current to see if there's any kind of nuisance tripping. I checked it at ×1 and I checked it at ×5.
On the auto.
Yeah.
And again, just ask that question either at the preparation day or speak to the centre before you go.
Our students used to hate us. We never let them use the auto. So when we was teaching it and stuff, it was just at that point we had to test at ×5 and record it ×1. So it was always important for us that they understood what each one of them were, not just bang it on auto, press the button. And like I always say, a lot of people can test. An employer can give an apprentice test, so go plug in, go plug in, go plug in. Which again, you might do at the start of your apprenticeship, which is fine because you're helping your employer out. You're trying to make his job easier for him. But it's no good just reading a number off a screen and not knowing whether it's okay. You need to understand what that number means to then put it into context. Because again, part of this is confirming test results within documentation. You might do a loop test on a socket circuit you've installed on the AM2, but then you need to confirm whether that ZS value actually achieves ADS as per our maximum tabulated ZS values.
And where do we find, how can I, that brings up, because that's going to be the next question. It says, verify that test results are obtained, confirmed to the values required by BS760 or the Guidance Note 3. So I've done my earth loop fault impedance. I've calculated whatever, I've tested it. Where do I test? What am I looking for?
So again, you're looking at them ZS values, the maximum. And again, on your pre-assessment day, what an opportunity to ask, do I need to use the 80% value or do I need to use the 100% value? And if you don't know what we're talking about when we talk about these, then when you're looking at this test, again, that honesty, okay, maybe I need to work on bits of it. But again, pre-assessment day, whether they want you to use a 100% value or an 80% value, and then you confirm your result against the table with your protective device and see if it is under that value.
And where do I get so which one gives me, where do I get 100% from?
So PS7671?
That's the big brown regs book. And if I want the 80% value?
The Guidance Note 3 or the on-site guide.
On-site guide.
And a table will differ dependent on the protective device. So.
And just on that as well, it's in the wording. So if it says the maximum tabulated value, they're referring to BS7671, the wiring regs. If they're talking about the measured value, well now you're looking at the more practical
80%
guidebooks,
value,
on-site guides.
So two good things there, maximum, the regs book, tabulated, the measured value, your on-site guide and your Guidance Note 3. All available on the day. Just that you don't pick them up, you don't read them, you don't learn, because we're going to come on to that in a minute more.
I'll just give it another little bit just on the testing as well, because I have the benefit of having seen this as you have as well, Marcus and Neil, in college. There's layers to testing. Why are we testing? What are we trying to achieve here? But then it's also about how do I set up the tester? And then it's in terms of record the value, but then it's comparing the value.
Yeah,
so
100%.
when people are starting out in the trade and year 1, year 2 apprentices and they do it, it can be frustrating.
Yeah.
But this could take you 10, 15 times, but it's the same trick. You're building up your skills and your knowledge
Well,
as you go on.
I remember 2 old boys, Saab Matharu and Clive Edwards.
They probably wouldn't thank you for saying that they were old boys.
But 2 very skilled people that, you know, we've worked with and that and thing. And they said, I said, I've not got that value on my meter because I've got 0. And they said, you've got a value. Yeah. What is it? So what is that 0? And what Marcus has been trying to explain, Derek, earlier is understand your values. Yeah. If it's 0, what test am I doing? If it's a insulation resistance test and I've got 0, I'm in a mess.
You are, yeah.
If it's continuity, it's different.
It's a very low reading,
understanding your reading, where do they come from? That's what we're talking about when we're testing, because that leads us on to section D.
And just quickly, let's revert back there because you've opened another can of worms for me now, because you mentioned insulation resistance and testers. Again, you might use a Mega at work, a Fluke, a Matrel, TIS, etc. Each tester, from my experience, when you're doing insulation resistance at 500 volts DC, Mega predominantly greater than 999.
Yeah.
Some are greater than 499.
Yeah.
If you're using a tester and its tolerance only goes up to greater than 499 on 500 volts, on your test paper, don't then write greater than 999 because you've then put in incorrect information. You know it means the same thing, however, it's not the same value. One's again, for me, know the tester you're using. Yeah. Don't get comfortable with what you're used to at work and say, yeah, greater than 999, 999, 999, and actually yours goes greater than 499.
Yeah, because
you might get picked up on it.
We use Mega here, so that's why I quote it. It becomes Mega's a manufacturer's name.
That was for you, Lee.
Fault diagnosis and rectification. You know, again, this is one that worries students before they go, because if they're good electricians and been trained properly, they don't often come across faults and rectification.
No, it's one of them hard ones, isn't it? Because faults are not designed as part of a system. So when you're working out in the real world, you might go months and months and months without actually having to do any fault finding. It all depends on the business you work for. However, it doesn't mean you can't understand the processes behind finding faults. So what I mean by that is identifying, well, if the RCD's tripping, are we going to go straight and do a continuity test? Probably not.
So when I'm coming back to my favourite document in that, and I'm going to show Marcus that I'm ready for fault diagnosis, because he's going to say knowledge, demonstrate to me. Yeah, so knowledge, explain it, and now experience. Well, demonstrate, show me a when. What would you do in this situation? Because that's what we're talking about. Yeah. If this situation, what would you do? So for Marcus, it says, work accordingly. Well, I've got my PPE on and everything else. Yeah. I've checked my instruments calibrated. Yeah. You know, these are things that I'd be doing on the day.
It's safe to use, it's a leader,
GS38. Yeah. So I've done all that, and I've wrote on my sheet, all test instrument calibrated to GS38. This is me showing that I'm prepared for it, because it's asking on here. And then carry out checks, and in some parts of the installation I might not get access to and I can't remove. So, you know, there's bits I can undo, bits I can't undo. So I need to know that if I put a long lead and I put a cable on one end to another end of the cable, and I'm just using an ohms meter, I'm not going to use an installation resistance set, I'm just going to use an ohms meter. Clipped on one end, clipped on the other end. What sort of reading am I going to get?
Well, again, it depends whether you're identifying an open circuit. If you have an open circuit, you're going to get a massively high reading. Yeah. Whereas if you've got a closed circuit, you're going to get a low reading. You might have an intermittent fault, which again, that's more real world, where it sort of dabbles between the two. But generally in a test environment, it's going to be one or the other. And it's not just about identifying it, it's about understanding how to identify it with which tests. So if you're looking at open circuit, you're not going to go do an insulation resistance. That's really never going to tell you there's an open circuit. Or you're not going to do a loop test. It's not going to tell you there's an open circuit. So it's understanding which test is for which fault, but also how we can then rectify.
Well, that's the question. That's where we're getting to, because on continuity, we're looking for low ohms reading. But actually, if it's an open circuit, and we could get confused, because if we were using an insulation resistance test on it, we'd expect we'd get an I reading.
Yeah.
So it's different to understanding that reading. Okay, and it says carry out checks. So we need to know, I suppose, what sort of faults we could get. And one of them, you've mentioned there, Marcus, is open circuit.
Yeah.
So what instrument would I use for an open circuit?
Again, you'd use a low reading ohm meter.
Yeah.
So depending on the instrument, you would select the low reading ohm meter,
Yeah.
But again, there's multiple ways, and it's one of them with how far you take your knowledge. We can use different methods. So we have what they call a throughput test, where you would use a long lead.
Yeah.
Some people might not be comfortable with that method, and they actually want to use sort of a different method, maybe the R1, R2 method, to actually find out where that circuit is stopped, etc.
Because that's really important, because we've got to identify where this fault is, and we can't just put lighting circuit. If the lighting circuit's got 10 switches and you've left site, someone else comes to do the repair, they've got to do all your hard work again. But if you put at switch 3, I can go to switch 3, I know there's a fault between there and maybe switch 4.
Yeah.
So we need to record, and is the circuits numbered, the accessories, when finding the faults?
You've got 7 faults.
Yeah.
Okay, and again, just to sum it up, the AM2E that I did was made up of 7 circuits and a bonding conductor. So again, I got 7 faults, 1 per circuit. Now, the advantage here is that you've installed it. You know it, so you understand your lighting circuit, you understand the ring main and the spur and stuff. So you have a good idea as to what potential problems there could be. Taking us back in terms of what the faults can be, I'm just going to take you back to the net documentation, the preparation pack, which tells us that you've got short circuit, open circuit, high resistance connections, or polarity, where wires can be cross-connected.
Do they give you, again, I know you probably can't say too much, but is it they say, right, go and find the faults? Because people might be worrying, thinking, I've got these faults to find, I don't know what they're going to be. Or will they say to you, and they'll give you a scenario? So a customer has contacted you, and maybe they've said that they've gone to turn on their tap, and they feel like they're receiving a tingle.
Yeah, there was basically a sheet. So the assessor's not saying anything to you. So it wasn't on the circuit that I installed, it was on the identical circuit that was close to us.
Switchable fault.
Absolutely, okay, and the assessor would say, are you ready for the first fault? So he'd put that on.
Could you tell the assessor which order you wanted to do it in?
I didn't, because again, I'm just a top to bottom, probably rule follower, whereas you might have said, I want that one. You know what I mean? I don't think it made a difference to the assessor.
No, you just had to tell him
But I was just churning my way through. There was a pack, so again, very clear. I don't know whether that was different faults for me as it might have been for someone else, whether there's a bank of them or whatever.
I bet it's about, you'd assume there's a bank of them.
Usually a bank in there,
Sorry, what Marcus was saying there is that there's a brief description as to what the problem could potentially be, and that's symptoms. That'd be us talking to our customers and them saying, well, the lights are flickering.
And you get time before, after each. It's not a race, we know there's 2 hours fault finding, and you get time to just have a look at them faults and not, your time. So I could go and think, I'm going to get myself a bit of confidence here because I'm not keen on fault finding and don't do a lot of it. And I might just say, if there's a bonding one, do that because it's one cable. And then look at the sheet and maybe write some rough notes. So identify the circuit. It's the bonding conductor. Identify the fault. Well, the fault's in, could be an open circuit, short circuit, high resistance sort of thing. Open circuit. It's saying, so I'm going to test and identify the fault where it is. Maybe between the. It might just be the water pipe in the, not the gas, it could be the water, so disconnect it. So it might be on the water pipe, that there's a break in the open circuit, so somewhere along the line the conductor's cut. I've then got to say, because I'm not going to rectify it, because it's got to be on there for someone else if they ever need to switch that fault, but I need to write down, how do I do it? So replace bonding cable between bonding in distribution board, one, whatever it's called,
Yeah, the
and
MET
the water pipe,
Yeah.
replaced with 10 mil same size cable.
And you're dead right. And I'm going to say back to the spec, because the spec will have nodes, effectively points on the circuit, and then you tell them between which nodes you want to replace that leg of cable.
And then I've replaced something. What have I got to do if I've replaced something?
Carry out a set of tests again to check and make sure that what you've just
So I
reinstalled
could
is
then
safe.
put, instead of writing every step down, I could put inspecting test 2 or retest
produce a minor
2,
work
guidance
certificate,
notes
etc.
3
Yeah.
and produce documents.
Yeah.
Yeah, not actually list everything. It could be
No,
that
yeah.
statement, because that's all it's asking for. Yeah. Anything on fault finding?
Oh, I'll just go back just to before fault finding, because in order for you to work on that pre-made rig,
Yeah.
that's when your safe isolation is carried out.
Yeah.
Because they're going to effectively put faults onto a rig that you have to find.
Yeah.
And
So-
that's section C.
Yeah, section C was the safe isolation, which
Yeah.
was the board you're about to work on.
That's the three-phase board.
Absolutely. So the
Done
full
that 3
board.
times now.
Yeah, and I needed to do a single phase circuit, which again can be any of the single phase circuits, and one of the
Lighting or
and
CO2
one of the 3
yeah.
phase circuits. Yeah,
And a three-phase circuit, so that's going to be like a motor or an industrial socket that you've got to test.
Yeah.
And that might have isolators in, might have
Yeah.
and you need to read the spec where the fault is, where it wants me to isolate.
Yes.
Because isolator, the motor could be the isolator, but if they want the spare isolating, it's at the distribution board.
Board, yes.
Yeah.
Again, it's
Spec, read.
yeah.
Students
Well,
often think, all they go on about is the spec, but then they get there and they're like, that's why.
No, but it actually gave me a bit of comfort, because
Yeah.
now I didn't need to ask any questions.
You could just
it's,
crack on.
It's there.
Yeah.
So you literally don't have to ask the assessor
Yeah.
anything.
And some people are worried to ask questions because they think it hinders them, don't they? So again, an opportunity there where you don't have to ask the assessor and maybe feel a bit like, I don't really want to ask him because he might put that against me, thinking,
Yeah.
what's he asking
Yeah.
that for? When actually it's in the spec, we can read
Yeah.
the spec and just say,
That just struck a chord there, Marcus, because again, at the tender age of 53, I was still
Yeah.
worrying that if I upset the assessor,
Yeah,
well,
we're
that
all
might
the same.
not fall in my favour. You know?
So, section E then, we're coming to the end of this. Section E, 1 hour. And this is, again, you see on the splits where students fail this simple section. Well, it's not simple. It's only simple if you know it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Again, this can serve for everyone, don't get me wrong. And it's assessment of applied knowledge. And basically, the first part, you're going to get so many questions on health and safety. And health and safety, go and practice the ECS card that's free to download. All that. So if I'm going to put Marcus on the spot, what does a mandatory sign look like, Marcus?
a mandatory sign.
Yeah.
Mandatory is blue, isn't it now?
Is it square, triangle, circle?
It's a circular shape.
And white or black?
White.
White.
Yeah, there we go.
So again, fire extinguishers. Shall we put Derek on the spot?
Okay.
Okay. A water fire extinguisher.
Well, all fire extinguishers are going to have a red body, but
Yeah.
the water-based one is going to be a red panel.
And what would I not use it on?
Not going to use it on any electrical fires, because that'd be a disaster.
Or oil.
Okay, oil.
Oil to black.
Yeah.
Hey.
I'm going to put you on the spot. Neil, can you just do an adiabatic equation for us?
Yes. That brings us on to the next question, Marcus. When was the last time you sat an 18th edition exam? It could have been the unit 2 years ago at the end of your college theory.
Yeah.
It may have been if there's been an update recently.
Yeah.
But you've not done a BS 761. You've not. Tell me when you last opened the reg book. You open it every day. We open it in this
We
job
have
every
to.
day.
But again, you should as an electrician, so get in the habit of knowing your job and the safety levels we have to consider to do your job. It's not just about the AM2. It's about moving forward. But again, prep yourself for the AM2 by,
Learning sections.
By learning sections, and just, even if it's little things, just like, looking at the start of the book to see, right, chapter, what are they? And just learning the chapters can actually help massively.
And there's lots of, past questions that you can research or ask the college for, types of questions, and then go away and find them in the regs book. You can't use your own regs book tabbed up.
No.
You've got to use the one that's there, which then helps. Well, if I want to find a protective device, where do I look? In 4.
Yeah.
It's just
And
about
get used to it.
speed, because
Speed.
again, this assessment is a 1 hour assessment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got a few questions on health and safety, a few questions
Yeah.
on building regs, and then the majority of the questions are going to be on wiring regs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the information's in that big brown book.
Yeah.
But that's
You've got to
600
use it.
pages. You've got to try and find it. So I totally agree with you. It's worth just training, as I was saying earlier about training my termination skills or my glands or whatever.
And this is
Same
a
thing.
shout out to every lecturer, training provider. When they're doing practical, come on, let's improve the training of these learners. Let's help them. And then when they're doing something, show me 4 things in the regulations that apply to your install.
Yeah.
That's good quality teaching that we've all used in the past.
You could use that for anything, couldn't you? Testing and all sorts. You can say, right, get me the regs book, show me where them values are.
Yeah.
Show me what the disconnection times are, etc. Show me where they are in the book.
Yeah, show me why we have to have good terminations,
Yeah,
electrically,
and-
mechanically
yeah.
sound. It's all in there,
Yeah.
and I think sometimes it becomes a bit disjointed.
Yeah.
What I found in this particular section was it was really just checking, is my health and safety knowledge there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is my wiring regs knowledge
Yeah.
there? Is my electrician's guide to building regs? And that was one that I hadn't used.
It's almost
enough
one of them things, isn't it, where it's almost like, right, we've seen that he can do it.
Yeah.
Does he know about it?
Yeah.
Yes.
To some extent with the installation, it's one of them classic examples. Like, I think there's an old saying, it's something like, those who do, those who can't do, teach.
Yeah.
One of them things.
And
isn't it?
then those who can't teach the teachers. Okay.
Teach PE.
But let's just go back to the building regs.
Oh, I just want to interject there. I still teach, so you might want to cut that piece out.
Going back to the building regs, building regs that apply to an electrical installation. When was the last time you had a look what they are? And I remember all black cats eat flies, lice in mice, and I learnt that way. Yeah, remember that saying?
No, I didn't do that way.
If you get the electrical guidance to the building regs, a little green book, I think.
Yeah, electrician's guide to the building regs,
If you open it all in centre, it lists the parts.
Yes.
And guess what? That's there on the day, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
That sits next to you while you're doing this test.
Yeah. So
But if you've never seen that book, never opened it, you're not going to learn.
You wouldn't know how easy they were. There were a couple of questions in terms of which letter of the building regulations is in relation to electrical safety or is in relation to structure. And they were really quite straightforward.
Yeah.
And again, but if you don't know they exist, you could miss a couple of marks there.
Pre-assessment day.
Yeah,
again.
and what we used to do with our learners, or I did especially, was when we was learning the building regs, mainly for the evening learners who were going more into domestic. I used to get them we'd do a whole lesson on, right, all these different parts, and they'd all come up with a list of ways that they could try and remember. So and I would always say an A-frame structure.
Yes,
we all know, we're old enough to know that an A-frame is one of the best structures we can have, and then B would be burn or boil, protection against fire, etc. I'm not going to tell you what C was.
C is that thing that you're sailing, Marcus. Yeah?
The letter C.
So,
Yeah.
But we then come on to inspection, testing, fault finding, and like you said earlier, this is checking your knowledge of it.
Yeah.
So tell me what you set the tester on.
Yeah.
Tell me what's the minimum accepted value.
Yeah.
And again, you've got the regs book there.
Oh.
If you're unsure, the on-site guide
It's in the book.
exam.
It's in the book. The hard part is finding it, and again, you can get better at that just by doing your practice and getting yourself up to speed. I think for me, across the whole thing, it was like fighting on a few different fronts.
Yeah.
I needed my theory strong, I needed my practice strong, I needed my inspection and test strong.
Yeah.
And again, for a young person, that's tough, because
difficult,
to
it
focus
is,
on multiple things all in a 2.5 day period
Yeah.
is tough going.
Yeah.
You'll feel it when you come away from it.
But that's why the importance of that, coming up with that battle plan and all of this pre-assessment and all of this, the prior stuff you do to it is only going to help. Like we're telling you, it's a 2.5 day exam. It's one of the biggest assessments you're going to have in your career. You might go on and do HNDs and stuff, and you'll have different levels of assessments, but this is going to be one of the biggest physical assessments you're actually going to do in your career as an electrician, isn't it?
To sum this up, one of the other things is the net website. you know, there's a page here, it says behaviours, and on there it says you can work effectively, reliably on your own. It says use oral, written and electronic methods, and I'd be saying that because it says I've got to sign that as an employer. Yeah, and I'd be saying about that part of the document, show me where I've got all this information from, show me where the prep guide is, show me where you got this document from the AM2. That's after going through all the check box.
Just quickly on that, Neil, it's important to know, depending on which AM2 you're doing, by that I mean AM2E, AM2S, or the AM2. You will have a slightly different requirement. So for instance, in Neil's, when we had that on behaviours, in the AM2E, there isn't actually a page for behaviours. So again, just have a look at the one you're doing. Again, you might be doing the AM2E and you're ticking off the AM2S, and they might be slightly different. So just check the one you've got is actually for the one you are going to complete.
That I'm talking about for the apprentice.
Did you want the experienced worker? Because, you know, the age difference. Do you want the experienced one?
No, I can actually show you my gold card, actually. Thanks to Derek for sitting all my exams. So then we've got the candidate declaration, and again, there's an employer, there's a training provider to sign it, and please stop wasting your money. If the candidate's not ready, if he can't demonstrate the knowledge and the experience on those boxes, don't tick it, because the last thing we want to do is they fail the composite. That's another 10 hours, so that's 2 days off work, 2 days lost of earning, 2 days you're without a person to help you as the client, letting the client down, 2 days travel, accommodation for some people, and then top it all, 480 quid.
Yeah, or depending on which section if you was to fail on a section, each section has a different value attached to it, but each of them have a value. None of it is going to be free to reset. No. So depending on what, and again, it's just that it's painful, isn't it?
It is.
It's one thing being told you failed, but then told you failed and you've got to pay 480 quid, mate.
But it's the financial pain. It's also the mental pain.
Yeah,
because
course,
if you miss out on a section, you've got to do it again.
Yeah.
And honestly, I've kind of looked at it and thought, I don't want to have to go through that again. I found it. You said earlier it could be compared to other achievements and stuff. For me, it was tough. It was big, and again, sense of achievement when you get it.
It's great. The achievement.
Yeah,
isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
When you're a training to be an electrician, it's the
net don't hide that. That's all available with guidance. What you should be doing, what we're trying to explain in this video today, on the net website with the apps, everything to support you. It also shows you the different type. People say, which one should I do? The S, the E, or there's a little table that shows you which route you're going to take, which one. Whether it's the AM2S, AM2E.
Yeah, and you would hope the training provider would make that clear from the start of your apprenticeship, and you'll be, you're not a psych as a teacher, they're always trying and management, it's a management thing, they will come in at the start of the year and they'll pretend to be Ofsted and they'll say, what course you on? And what awarding body is that? So they want you to push into your students, they know what they're striving to achieve and how they get there and what the end point is, so...
I'll just come on and just say a massive thank you to Derek.
Right,
for a lecturer that's very highly skilled, very knowledgeable, got a master's,
degree in electrical
electronic engineering. At that level, to come in at 58 and said, I've just passed my AM2.
53.
And he comes in here and he says, I've just passed my AM2 and I want to share it with you, all what I went through, all the worry, everything you're feeling. This man's come in today and shared that with you, and that's just for... I don't know.
And again, like you said, it's not an age thing. It's just how we feel as people. It's just one of the things. Derek's shared with you the feelings you're going to feel through this. So you've got that heads up now. Use it wisely. And again, what I would say, if anyone's done their AM2 or they get their results, shout about it. Tag me and Neil in on LinkedIn.
Definitely.
Add Derek. Tag Derek in. We're all there to help share that achievement and not share it, 'cause it's not our achievement, but share it for you so that people know. And again, that just helps with networking and moving forward in the industry, doesn't
and
it?
the sector, you know, it improves the sector.
Of course
Again,
it does.
for me, it was a bit of unfinished business.
Yeah.
And again, I'm glad, because like that, Neil, I'd been working with Neil at Leicester College previously. He was always pushing me to get stuck in and get it done.
Yeah.
The support is always there. Doesn't matter who you are, you know, what your circumstances are. You let people know you're going through something, and people will help.
Just say thank you to our own Spartacus, Derek from Leicester College, and
Okay,
thanks
welcome.
for coming over.
No problem.
Guys, please like and subscribe. Don't forget to tag me and Marcus in on LinkedIn. Keep your eyes out for future episodes. And that comes to say, just thank you for tuning in. Check out Net's website, because they're the professionals at this. That's where all your information is. And I hope to see more apprentices at the Skill Electric competition, which will open in March time. So please check out Net's website and Skill Electric 2025. Thank you.